Hi, everyone, and welcome to Women Who Rise. I'm your host, Heather Mansy. This conversation is all about what it really takes to succeed when nothing is handed to you. We talk about fear, discipline, and why so many people stay stuck waiting for the right moment instead of building the skills that create opportunity. If you've ever felt like you know you're capable of more, but you're not sure what's holding you back, this episode is going to be for you. Looking at your own journey, what are the non-negotiables, whether in finances, mindset, or daily discipline, that you believe make a business truly bankable and a woman truly unstoppable?
Make time for your money, number one, because when I say make time for your money, I feel like it's never about the money, but when you are engaged with your financial journey and you're engaged, because business is unfortunately very much so like a financial journey. When you are engaged with where the money's coming from and where the money's going, and I always talk about profit and loss, most people pay attention to the top line and the bottom line. And I called my business strategy business bottom line because that's what the banks care about is your bottom line. The top line, the
Yes.
owner cares about the top line. The banks care about the bottom line and nobody cares about the middle. It's where it's at. It's in the middle, and the middle takes time to sit down, make an appointment with yourself. Even if you have a CFO, even if you have a bookkeeper, an account, engage in that process because that's how you know, shoot, I didn't do well this month. I was only half my goal. I need to refine. And that's another thing with planning, you have time to refine. You don't have time to refine when you don't plan. You react all the time. The refinement process is easy to make when you make time to plan. When you are dealing with your day-to-day, it's really important. That's my non-negotiable, is to engage every week. It's not every month, it's every week. Now, when the profit and loss shows up, yes, I read it and it's a meaningful document that nobody's paying attention to in business. When I say non-negotiable, it's something I need to do every day, but it's not something I don't adjust as I move forward. Open to refinement because it's constant refinement process.
Whatever the format, on stage, you name it, is that I really get a massive, sense of your heart, your humility, and your contribution towards others. Who were the leaders or mentors who shaped your standards for excellence, your, heart for other people? What philosophies or lessons from them maybe still guide you? You're leading thousands of agents today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, obviously a lot of mentors, obviously my mom and dad. And my mom was a big time superstar real estate broker. It started in 1971 down in San Diego, Southern California. I was born in San Diego. And then about 1975, we relocated to Northern California, Sacramento area, Fair Oaks. And I grew up there and graduated from high school in 84. But my mom and dad, profound impact. My mom was the superstar saleswoman. She's amazing. She was, if I could just get my hands on them, they're mine. She loved open houses. I've never seen her shake. I just got to get my hands on them, Dad. I'd say, you're coming with me. I'm going to help you buy a house. And she was so authentic and real and just an amazing woman. And she was great. And my dad was like, leave it to Beaver. My dad, everyone loves my dad. He's just the sweetest, nicest guy. He's not a big sales guy. He wants to be, but he's too nice. He's like, they find the house and he's like, you probably, we can do better. Let's just keep looking. And he's always, it was so funny, my dad. And it's sort of like, they want to make the offer, write the offer. But I love my parents, and my dad, he always taught us, when you go camping, leave the campsite cleaner than you found it. And he was always generous. He'd always buy people breakfast or lunch or buy dinner, and he would always give and always there. So my parents are big. Gary Summerhays, my high school soccer coach, powerful impact on my life. Look back, there's a few times I remember this woman on a ski trip to Utah for the YMCA. I don't even know her name, but she said some amazing kind things to me about how I was just going to be amazing and have this great life. And no one had ever said that to me. I'm like a 15-year-old kid or
Wow.
something. I just was
Yeah.
like, really? And then my Astros coach when I was 10. But if you think back outside of my parents and maybe outside of your parents, and maybe your parents didn't say nice things to you, but there was the Astros coach, he and his wife, don't remember them, from Chula Vista, San Diego, growing up as a kid before we left. Then there was the YMCA counselor on a school bus on a week-long YMC blizzard ski trip to Utah. That woman, and then my coach, Gary Summaries, 3 people outside of my parents who spoke words to me. And I'll say this to you. You know what? The power of the spoken word. You have so much power in you if you would sincerely and authentically call out what you see in somebody else. Maybe they're not a great communicator, but they're a great lover. And I don't mean lover in the terms of a Latin lover, or I don't mean that, but they love people. Maybe they're always doing gifts and they're always thinking of others and they're serving and they're giving, or they just have this way with people, or whatever it is. They're great artists. They're a great musician. Speak to them. People don't do that enough. And that's why, again, I always want to be a pastor, but it says in the Bible that tongue has the power of life and death. And the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Are you kidding me? Some people listening right now still remember what your aunt said to you when you were 8, what your dad said to you when you were 5, what your mom said for you. That stuff will crush you, and you got to let it go. You got to shake it off, but use your words to change somebody's life. It's better than money.
So good. I love that. And yeah, I just wrote that down because honestly, we can talk about a lot of fancy coaching, but it can come down to the very basic, simple things, human kindness shared.
Yeah.
And your big moments that you remember is when someone poured into you with kindness or taught you kindness. And then that ability and that challenge to all of us, find a way to be kind, inspire another human, know that what you say is making an impact every day. Who challenged or inspired your thinking the most? And what lasting philosophy did that, mentorship or that collaboration create in you?
Yeah, so I've been blessed to have some amazing mentors, which, by the way, I don't think most people reach out and ask for help. So in my journey, I feel like the most giving, the most open, the most accessible people have been the most successful people I've encountered. And so I think there's this fallacy where people just don't reach out because they think someone's busy. And the busiest people I know have the most control of their time. And so I've chosen to be in relationships where I ask questions, and I've just been super grateful my entire journey. I've found several folks who said, "You remind me of a younger version of me," and have poured into me. And as someone who now pours into others, all I think anyone looks for is reciprocity, right? It's like, look, if you want to
Yes,
learn, when you are teaching, the biggest reward is seeing people go execute what you taught them, right? Like, no
100%.
one will pour more into your cup if you ignore their advice. But if you give sage advice and then they'll go execute, it's like a video game where you advance to the next level. And this is coming more from being a parent now and seeing our little humans self-actualize and have goals and have their own things. And like our kiddos are 11 and 8, and our daughter sings in a School of Rock band, and she's now done like 2 or 3 live performances where she's the lead singer at she
Oh,
just turned 11, so she did this all at 10 years old to like a room full of adults, and she's singing like No Doubt, Spiderwebs, right? And that's so crazy
Amazing.
to watch. And then our little guy's obsessed with jujitsu, and he's competed in like 3 tournaments, and he's medaled every time. And some of the kids, like he made it all the way to the finals, and the other kid he was competing against is homeschooled to compete in jujitsu, and he's an 8-year-old, and I was terrified of how he looks, right, physically, like just all muscle and obsessed. But it's cool to be able to support and help our kiddos push past their fear boundary, right? Like, I think there's a distinction
Yes.
of like projecting my failures in life onto a child, right? I think that there's a very obvious, persona there versus like, listen, and it's funny because both Ariana and I can care less about school, like at all. Like sometimes they almost look disappointed that I'm not excited about their grades. And I asked them, I said, look, all I want you to learn is learn how to socialize and learn how to, I'm more excited that they've both been like student class presidents, because that's like gaining consensus, selling your idea, getting to talk and represent others. And I think school is actually a socialization experiment on like, can you play well with others? Because by the way, we're all just a bunch of grown up kids, right? So, the skill sets I developed in college were not like, reading and writing. It was my ability to lead my fraternity and get voted in as president, and, all the things that I think have had way more direct implication into the things I've been able to attain and do in life.
I love that. Yes. And, it's this concept of gaining consensus, like you said, learning to enroll others, maybe learning to create healthy debate. This ability to socialize can lead to happier, better relationships in marriage, in longer lasting relationships, in the ability to have better relationships with extended family, because it's all a testing ground, a proving ground, kind of a safe place to try your hand at being a human. What do you think that, well, and I honestly think you touched on it a bit just now. What do you think that that people most misunderstand about women who lead from feminine power, spiritual grounding, and intentional joy? And how have you been able to help, others, the world at large, or those you are teaching navigate those misconceptions?
Well, I would just say that, as a culture, the Western American culture that's been built on, three ideologies, not only, but three pillar ideologies of materialism, capitalism, and individualism, those ideologies have often worked against the spirit of humans. And so when we talk about feminine leadership, we're talking about a more recognition of the whole person. We're talking about being present to this human. We're talking about recognizing gifts, talents, skills, and abilities. We're talking about being a listener, not just a talker and a speak to-er. We're talking about also honoring our intuitive hits that are coming from the energy, our sixth sense that we're also reading, that's collecting data from a different space, but it's as valid as what my five senses are taking in. So it's a win for everybody, but if there's any misconceptions, it's because we are brand new newborns to this whole space, because feminine leadership means you're taking into consideration the spirit, the mind, and the body, not just the mind and the intellect and the education and the things that in our culture up to now have been the things that have defined us. So we're just new on the block to this. We got to get our IQ up. We got to get our spiritual IQ up. We got to become more intimate with understanding what the spirit in each of us needs and how you care for that, and the difference it makes when you do as a whole being, not just compartmentalizing pieces of your being. And we're seeing the breakdown and collapse and deterioration of that neglect in the mental, the physical, the divorces, the cancers. So it's showing up, and the toll has been great from that IQ being low and the neglect of that very real and causative, level of us. So it's not so much misconceptions, it's more like ignorance or blind spots or absences of understanding,
Yes.
which is kind of a little different than just a straight out misconception.
Yeah.
Yeah, but men love it, women love it. It's a win-win because
Yes. So
feminine,
let's
yeah,
So let's tap into that. Do you also have programs for men or couples? I believe you do.
for both, yeah. In my
Yes.
Love Academy, my love relationships pathway, I do work with couples that are either engaged or married. I have love relationship courses for single and married women. I have a high level course called Preparation for Partnership for women who want to be in a juicy covenant marriage in the next 1 to 3 years. And it's the preparation program for that. I have a transformational program for men called The Edge. And then I also have a love relationships seminar specifically for men called Mentality. So there's a lot of work for us to do among our peers, men among men, women among women. Why? Because so many of the love lies that have infected and influenced how we show up and relate in the love relationship space are along gender lines. And the love lies are along gender lines. There's female love lies and there's male love lies. So that's why, in addition to, joint spaces, I also have the spaces where I'm working with women and we're talking about the female love lies and how do we uh, challenge and debunk those. And then what are the love truths? And then the same thing with the men. They are not the same. So they need to be in their own spaces where we can address those very specific untruths that they have had built into their programming. So yummy stuff. And, all kinds of new marriages and marriages that were on the rocks that are now renewed and resurrected when they looked like, divorce was the only option. And so just lots of
Yes.
amazing, but that's what transformation makes possible.
Mhm.
So yeah, some powerful stories in those spaces. And yes, I do work with men and I also do coaching with men as well, one-on-one.
Was there a moment early in your journey when you realized you weren't just building a career, but building capacity for leadership and legacy among and in your organizations? And what sparked that awareness?
Most people, don't take the time to come up with the 20 ideas, and they certainly don't take the time to actually do the 20 ideas. So if you will be a person that will discipline yourself to ask the question, what could I do to be better, faster, quicker, more efficient, and then actually set a priority of those things. And oftentimes by the way, you don't do all 20. Maybe you just pick out. I've found, by the way, that in terms of strategic objectives, it's probably best to not choose more than one a quarter, right? So there's strategic things and then there's tactical ones. You can fit a bunch of tactical in, or you can even delegate those. But anyway, the point is to have the awareness to do those things. And so, like I said, my dad taught me to just have that relentless pursuit of improvement. Tony Robbins, I think, doesn't he call that what is the saying he uses? Can I? Constant, never-ending improvement, I think, is the term that he uses.
Yes.
But
Yes. And
anyway,
he's a fan of saying, take massive action.
well, yeah, that, right? Absolutely. So anyway, when I got into business, by the way, I used the same exact strategy, but I would say that if there was a common denominator of my strategy in sports and then I carried into business, it was to model the success of successful people that had gone before me. Right. So when I grew up in Sacramento, California, I started windsurfing at 14. At 16, I said to my dad, hey, I'm the best here. If I'm going to progress, I got to move to the Bay Area, which I did. And then I came back from that summer and I'm like, hey, Dad, if I'm gonna get better, I got to go to Florida in the winter, which I did. And then I got onto the United States Olympic team. And so I was always asking myself, I never said, oh, well, I'm in Sacramento, so this is my world. I'm number one. Nobody can beat me in Sacramento. Well, that's just a little pond. Believe me, when I went to the Bay Area, they smoked me at first. And then when I went to Florida, it was even worse. But, turns out if you copy people long enough and precisely enough, and then add a little bit of your own medicine, sometimes you win.
What experience first taught you the value of discipline over motivation? And how did that lesson shape the way that you approach business today?
Elon Musk, you've heard the story. He said that they were failing in 18 and
Oh,
he was working from 6 in the morning till 12 at night, all these
mhm.
meetings. And then he says, wait. I found three cogs in my, in basically the manufacturing process. They were only making 2,000 cars a week and they had to make 5,000 cars a week to actually, guess what? Make money.
Right.
People were shorting the stock. Because he did the one thing, he said, I found the first cog. I spent 100% of my day fixing that cog the first month. The second month, spent 100% of my time on that one thing, that the cog in the manufacturing. And then the third month, 100% of my time on the one. Well, he said, what I learned was instead of doing everything, running around going crazy, we all just work, what we call it the treadmill, or the hamster wheel. We think we have to do everything. I just need to focus on what's the one thing I should be doing. Now, in my sales career, I've been in real estate, and it's almost in any sales job or entrepreneur job, it was lead generation. If I get more leads than everybody else, I win the game. And once I figured that out, I went, I'm going to spend literally 90% of my time doing that.
Your personal skills, your stick-to-itiveness. Something you just said was actually very telling about that when you said that, I was committed to this process, right? That for you, failure was not an option. What does that look like in practice?
I think above all, probably a very sickening work ethic, if I can say it like this. I really worked my butt off the first 10 years. Now I started taking vacations and have a little bit more balance, but it all starts with the work, right? People always want to see quick success and they don't want to put in the work and they don't have the work ethic. And they think it looks so glorious. They see me selling all those houses. I just put like a almost $8 million under contract. People think this is all I do all day long. It took me 15 years to get to that point, right? So they don't see what's behind the scene. They see the glorious success stories on Instagram and Facebook. I should be posting more of the failures actually, because it's a lot behind the scenes. And I think that this work ethic that I have from being an athlete, from being an actress, where you always had to be on top of your craft and always strive for perfection, I think that has really helped me in life to, I mean, Jessica, my director of operations, she knows whatever we do, it's never good enough. There's always room for improvement. So I think that has been one factor, but of course there are many factors. And I get asked that question a lot, what I think is the main contributor, but it all started with the work ethic. Other contributor, there's many other contributors, right? Like relationship. I am a giver, I'm a relationship person, and the clients that work with me stay with me. And I think that is very important because I'm not a transactional person. So that has helped me retain my clients, and the clients that work with me, they're clients for life. We barely have ever clients that cheat on me.
And I love that you use that term, playfully. But yes, because it can be difficult when you do have that occur when someone says, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and use another person, and you find out about it after the fact. So much of what so much wisdom I think that you unpacked there. How do you think that you're able to create this kind of a world and space that looks like that around you?
I wanted women to be seen. I wanted them to feel heard. And I wanted them to be given skills and opportunities. And then even see people who have been in spaces that they've been in so that they can realize that I can rise too. What would you like to say as a young person that's living in this space, right? And so when you think about that, I really wanted these folks that I have come in contact with that have been in these spaces to be able to share how they have become resilient. That yes, they were incarcerated. Yes, they were in gangs. Yes, they may not have been the ones doing the drugs, but they were selling the drugs, right? So how do you then reach back and stop a young woman from going down the same road that you traveled? How do you pull her up? How do you share your authentic self with her to say that's not really what you want to do? How do you tell the young woman who is being influenced by a loved one, a family member, to go prostitute? How do you go back? It has to take a time to just stop and say, I need to hear your voice. Others need to hear your voice. And I need you to be honest and tell us how you came out of that. Where did you have the epiphany, or did the light come on to say, you need to help somebody else and you don't have to stay in this? And so I think really it is that just giving people an opportunity to know that they're important to be heard.
What are your thoughts around female centric leadership and what may be different or maybe is looked at as either a benefit or a detriment depending on the audience?
I think that people view female leadership as being driven by emotion, and I think that that is also true. This has been the year for me of two things can be true at the same time.
Yes.
And female leadership is a perfect example of that because, yes, I would probably say that female leadership is a little more emotional driven, but we can be two things at the same time. We can be data driven and emotional driven, and that can be a good thing. That is not a bad thing. It is not a detriment to your team to be driven on emotion because it means that you care.
What would you tell, those people about taking that first courageous step into leadership or the unknown?
Ladies that are listening,
Yeah.
you are your harshest critic. So be your best friend instead. Be your biggest hype girl. Watch the words you say to yourself. And yes, you can. Like, yes, you can. And you can do it. And you can do it better than you ever thought that you could. Like, the results will be 10 times better if you just make that first step and then keep being that delusional voice in your head. That's like your hype girl, like the girl that's like, you look amazing in this outfit and you can do it and you're going to sell more houses than anybody else or whatever that looks like. Like, that's what
Yeah.
we need. We need more of that. I feel like as women, that's the community that I'm also trying to build. And I'm not the best at that. There are moments where I'm like, delete the TikTok. What are you doing on TikTok? You're too old to be on TikTok.
Yes.
And then I'm like, whatever. Then if that's the case, then they'll just continue. They're just going to keep scrolling. Like, it's fine. I got to get myself out there. And yes, I can. If they can do it, I can do it. So that's what I would say. That I think that's going to be hopefully my legacy for my team. That's what I tell newer agents all the time. If this girl who came literally from living in trailer parks as a little girl can go get a college degree, create this beautiful family that is definitely not perfect, reach successes that she never thought she could. Like, if she could do it, so can you.
Can you talk a little bit about that portion of your coaching? Because I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And I have had you as that coach, and it was phenomenal.
I remember. Yeah, I think we did like the future self visualization, and that's so like to
Yes.
visualize. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I love doing
Yes.
that. So if you can visualize your future self, you can change behaviors and patterns in your present self. But the present person is the one that has to do the work. And it's so interesting because, like I said in my story, like, I'll just do it tomorrow. I'll just do it tomorrow. But when we can really tap into the future self and see her as this real, you can move into it with emotions. I have really great workshops, questions that I ask people to get them to tap into who they really want to be. A lot of women I've noticed lately when I work with them, they're in this midlife state, and they maybe have gone through this empty nesting where their kids have gone off to college. And it's like, what do I do now? I love working with people around that too, just finding your passion, finding what's next. What are you going to do with the next decades of your life? And where does the health come in? What habits? It's within you already. So by asking the right questions, that is so important to understand. You already have the answers. But accountability is such a big piece, right? So if you meet weekly with a coach, you make progress. You just make little bits of progress and big leaps sometimes, and you can literally transform and change. And anybody can change. You can be 35, 85, you can still change and transform.
Do you think that we are entering perhaps a new era of female voices, starting as well with your own in business and in real estate? I certainly hope so. We are past due for women's voices to be amplified as leaders, not only in our industry of real estate, but in entrepreneurship and in business in general. So it is certainly something I advocate for, something I believe we need, and something that, small steps is hopefully happening. Was there a moment in your journey when you realized success alone wasn't enough and that you might need to build it differently? I think there's always that moment. And there's a phrase that I use in the book, there's a devil at every level. And I think that we as women in particular, regardless of whatever the achievement is, we're always looking at the but what next? We rarely take that moment to give ourselves that pat on the back and live in the moment of achievement because we're always thinking and pushing about where do I go next? How do I do more? Because there's frankly usually just more on our plates, right? You just mentioned raising your boys, right? We are raising families, we're running businesses, we're, in our relationships with our spouses, like we're trying to juggle all the things. And that what's next is there. So for me, as I progress throughout my career, I have always tried to find alignment in the achievement, but sometimes the push for the achievement means that you're out of alignment. And that really is the core of what the message in the book is about. Because when people lose that alignment, that's also when they lose their joy. And when you lose your joy, you lose that X factor, that brilliance that makes you unique and special, and all of those talents that led to the success end up being stifled by it. And that leads to burnout. And that's what we see a lot in this business, and we see a lot in entrepreneurship. How did that realization change the direction of your life or your business, which informed those actions?
So mindset skills, I always preach mindset, skill sets, and discipline. And I always ask people, what's the most important tool in your toolbox? What is it? And everybody's like, oh, mindset, mindset, mindset. Yeah, you have to have mindset. You definitely have to develop skills, but consistency is actually your greatest tool. And the reason I say that is, and people will argue with me on this, even leaders and stuff like that will argue with me about that consistency is your greatest tool. They say mindset is, but I would say consistency is, because what happens is when you're very consistent, then you start to develop a very empowered mindset because you start to see results from your consistency. Because if you go into it and you don't have mindset and you're broken and you hurt and your heart hurts, the only thing that will carry
Yes.
you through is consistency. And you'll choked up on that, because I've seen people in scenarios that are just diabolically impossible. You look at it from their perspective and you go, how are you going to do this? I think about my friend John, who has cerebral palsy, and it was his consistency that made him successful. This guy went from this belief system, this mindset of, I can't do this. He was told his whole life, he can't do this. And I want to accomplish this because of his cerebral palsy. And he just consistent effort pushed him over the edge. And he became, ridiculously wealthy in real estate, And that's another cool thing about real estate, is just the ability to achieve something incredible without without a specific education or degree or something. It literally just opens the doors to all possibility. And so above all, consistency is your greatest tool. And as long as you're consistent, the rest of that, the mindset, because what happens is when you're really consistent, you start to see these wins pile up, and then you have wins, and then you have confidence because of the wins, and then the confidence adds a higher level of mindset, and then your disciplines fall into play, and then all of a sudden you're making money and you're changing lives and you're sharing with other people, and it's really a beautiful thing. Waking up in the morning and your perspective, you can't create, or you can't decide what your very first thought is when you wake up in the morning. It's impossible, right? Your mind is on autopilot. And so you can't decide that first thought, but guess what? You can decide the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. You can change your trajectory based on your thoughts, and your thoughts lead to your emotions, right? And then your emotions lead to your actions, and then your actions lead to your results. And so it's all based on that first thought. But yeah, consistency, it's a critical tool. It's your greatest tool. And if you can master your consistency and not lie to yourself, you can tell yourself, I'm going to do something, and then actually do it. That is the greatest gift you'll ever give yourself, is being truthful to yourself. and following through with yourself.